strategy coming your way. As a corporate trainer and consultant, I often see this same problem time and time again. In fact, when we're leading training, this is one of the big things that I like to address right out of the gate because it causes so much confusion, frustration, and there's a catastrophic cost associated with it if you don't address it. And this cost can be over $269,573 per employee per year. I'm going to break that down for you right now. But before I get there, here's the big idea. Organizations are simply confusing leadership with management. You need both, but you've got to make that distinction so you know which to pull out in which situation to make sure you're using the right skill set for the right moment. It's just like if you're trying to unscrew something or trying to screw a desk together and you don't use a Phillips head when you should be using a flat head and vice versa. Got to have the right tool, the right skill set for the right situation. But let's talk about the cost first. So $269,573, there are three components of that cost. Number one is simply the cost of turnover, which our research shows is the biggest chunk of this cost, which is $235,675 per employee per year. Now, many times people are surprised to hear this, but when I break this down, they're like, yes, this makes total sense. In fact, for my organization, it's even higher. Too often, leaders specifically think about the cost of rehiring and retraining, and that's just too narrow. Yes, those are essential costs, but you've also got to include the cost of the empty desk, which research shows can sit open for as long on average as 68 days. For those 68 days that the desk sits open, somebody's got to do that job. Quality declines, productivity drops, and morale can take a hit. Then you've got to go pay to bring somebody in. You often have to pay a higher salary. In fact, research shows that that can be 18 to 20% more than what you were paying the incumbent. And then lastly, when you bring that person in and they aren't at full production on day one. It takes time to build up. It can take 3, 6, 8 months, as long as a year for them to ramp up to full productivity. There's certainly a big cost associated with that. Next is the cost of miscommunication, which according to Siemens and Insignia Group is $26,041 per employee per year when it comes to miscommunication. And miscommunication can take a lot of shapes and forms, mainly waiting around on information. You make a request, you wait, you follow up, you're still not getting information, and your deadline passes. This is a great example of the cost of miscommunication. Also, ever received an email and you really weren't sure what they were asking for in the first place? So this results in an email exchange back and forth, often copying in other people and creating even more confusion and double work. The third component, which is less, but no less insidious, which is the cost of disengagement. This can be $7,857 per employee per year. Employees disengage when their leaders seem to be confused. They're getting jerked in different directions based on different priorities. Maybe they don't feel like there's total transparency, even when their leaders and managers are doing their best. So here's the quick breakdown on how we're going to solve this big mistake. Number one is to understand the distinction between leading and managing. Make sure that you also understand when to use both and that you have a plan in place to develop both skill sets for yourself and for your team. So let's talk about managing versus leading. The easiest way to define these, managing is a lot about directing and telling, where leading often starts with asking questions and declaring a vision. Those are two different skill sets. So we're going to talk a little bit about them now and why you really need to instill them in both yourself and others. Managing, you need to be given authority, whereas leading, you need to take responsibility. These key distinctions can really help you understand what to do. So for example, your annual review. A manager does an annual review because they're given authority to do that. Whereas leading often involves being a sponsor for someone inside your company or mentoring them. To mentor and to sponsor someone, you don't need to be given authority for that. You just need to care. Managing is about following the map, whereas leading is about creating the map. In other words, managing is about following processes, making sure others adhere and comply to that. Whereas leading is about the situations where there is no map, there is no specific process, and something new needs to be created to address the challenge. Managing is about meeting expectations, whereas leading is about charting new growth. Managing, in fact, you're trying to ensure quality and make sure people adhere to the process. But if you need to chart new growth for the organization in an area maybe that the organization's not been in before, or there's not a new specific process, that's about creating something new and charting new possibilities for growth. Managing oftentimes is essential because is about identifying the problem, whereas leading is about identifying solutions. Now, you can't just lead and identify solutions if the problems haven't been identified yet from the managing side. So these work in conjunction. But a lot of times it's so easy for people to get stuck in just talking about the problems all the time inside the organization and forget about the important skill set of the creating and identifying new solutions. And lastly, the skill set of management is a lot about directing and instructing, whereas leading is a lot about influencing and persuading others, oftentimes that don't report to you. So you can see these are two entirely different skill sets. And a lot of times people in organizations make the mistake, or they'll just rely on managing or they'll rely on leading, but they won't prioritize the other skill set as much. And these work hand in hand. Now, one of the keys is to understand the situation. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios where the skill set of a managing is important and other situations where leading is critical. Managing often is about increasing productivity 5%, covering for your teammate who's out, getting your annual reviews done, and incrementally improving the process. Whereas leading is about addressing a major disruption in the business, finding a way forward through a global pandemic, addressing your workforce when the air conditioning goes out in the middle of summer, or creating a new process for a new challenge that hasn't been faced before inside your organization. The key question is, what's your biggest challenge that you and your organization are facing right now? And does it require more managing or more leading? Now, for your next step, it's important to think about how you're developing these skill sets in yourself and in your team. This will allow you to create a robust bench of leaders that also can manage through the situations inside your organization. An article in the Harvard Business Review claimed that the average age of a new leader is around 30 years old. But that person doesn't often get leadership training for another 12 years. So that's over a decade of flying in the dark and managing by trial and error. It doesn't have to be that way. Reach out to me at the link below. Set up a quick time for a free tailored curriculum that equips your team with both leadership and management skills that they need to be successful for the long haul. And you'll see that you get a terrific framework to develop your leaders, reduce turnover, and build a bench for your future success. Whether you actually go forward with us or not, still have that curriculum to help you move forward in a positive and productive way. Looking forward to discussing with you.